doing DMV is this checklist with the DMV self-help tool. You can see it broke everything down for you to what each document you're going to be needing, and there's even examples of how the document should be filled out. So let me ask you guys, what are some of the main things that you noticed in the differences between this new checklist that just went live September 7th versus the old checklist?
Well, right off the bat, there's a B3.
Perfect,
And
yeah.
keep going, or just
Yeah, I can give as many as you want, if anyone else wants to jump in.
and I'll give someone else a chance.
They removed the checkboxes for FedEx or interoffice.
Yes, exactly. That's one of the big ones. So now you notice that we have our members actually fill out before they leave section 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on Reg 262. So before, if you guys remember, what members used to do is we would have to either call them to come in to sign this after the leasing company signed and filled it out with the odometer reading. But now we really are making it that one-stop shop for our members. So now they can actually sign it before they leave, and they don't have to come back or bring back the document when they've on lease buyouts.
That's awesome.
And then also in regards to the checklist itself, I don't know if you noticed, they have made it easier as reminders. For example, what we would need to collect. They did put it in bold for us as well, especially for our new team members like myself. Sometimes I would forget about things, but now they made it a lot easier, more visual for me. And especially even for like the and or. That was one of the big keys that we took away from it, because they were telling us a lot of DMV work does get sent back out because they're not sure if it's going to be an and or, especially if there's two buyers.
And I know it's super new too, and some things might be, you know, like a little bit more. You can see there's a B3 section. So always make sure if you have any additional questions, you can call DMV to get clarification. Something that I personally went through was when I used this new checklist, as soon as I found out about it, I started using it just so I can get used to how the checklist layout is. One of the things that DMV told me is when we're funding a lease buyout, you can see that it says to fill out section 2 on Reg 262, which is the odometer reading. You actually do need to leave the odometer reading blank. So even though you might see it on the example, the reason is because we still need to verify that the odometer reading is correct with the leasing company. So that's just one of the things to keep in mind, is when you're doing the lease buyout for no changes to registration or removing or, you want to leave the odometer reading blank.
Apart from that, as well as the purchase price. So leave both of those blank. Yes,
I do want to point out they also included the registration. Like,
Yes.
It's very important that if it's due within 90 days, it must be paid, submit a receipt, and if the registration is due within 45 days, we do not include it into the DMV packet. They need to renew it online. So I know that's always like can we make an exception? Can we include it? So it's more detailed. And then you can easily explain it to the member, like, hey, if it's due like next week, you need to pay it online, and it cannot be included into the DMV packet.
And sometimes if you call consumer loans, they'll say, well, go see your manager if they want to make an exception. But realize that it shouldn't be something that we even want to offer to the member, because when we make an exception, we are accepting the responsibility of taking on the DMV responsibilities ourselves, and we're not equipped to do that. So I'm not sure why they say that to you guys, but yeah, in very rare circumstances that we would make the exception.
And sometimes there's complications and then it doesn't get processed correctly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then we need to be the one to call the member or to figure out if the fees are short, like we need to take over the entire thing if we make the exception.
It becomes a liability at that point.
And you think about it, they think an exception, they're thinking we're doing something good for them, but then in the end it backfires and then we have to recover from that situation. So we do our member really a disservice. Although we think it's an exception and we're helping them in the end.
Are you guys comfortable explaining to the member why they need to do their own DMV if it's less than 90 days? If you're not, then we can go through some suggestions on what to say to the member. Everyone's good?
Does everyone know why it's important that DMV gets processed correctly?
We wanna make sure we become the lien holder.
Yeah, what happens if you're not? I didn't
They could have their auto loan rate converted to a personal loan rate.
And that is usually higher than a auto loan rate, so.
It usually goes up to 18%.
Yeah,
I
they
actually
don't
had
make it
recently I actually had an escalation that came in. It didn't come from our branch, it came from online funding, but the member was really upset that his loan rate was converted to a personal loan, and he wanted to, for me to explain why we do that. So, we refer back to the disclosure, but it kind of goes back to the importance of covering that when we do the funding. In my case, it was done via DocuSign, so I'm not sure what the process is of explaining it to the member. But in our situation, when the member's in front of us, please make sure you take the time to cover that piece of it on the disclosure, so the member understands that this is the process if they don't help us out. In my situation, the member had the title, but he doesn't live at that house, he lives at another house. So the mail is just sitting, in his mailbox. And he only goes to that house, his main address, like once in a blue moon. I think he works, his job takes him, to travel to different locations, and so he didn't know that he had to act upon it when he receives the title. So the title was there, but it was just sitting idle in his mailbox. So it was a difficult thing to explain after the fact. So let's make sure we take the time just to go over the disclosure up front, to be transparent.
Yeah, it's super important. So thank you, Hong, for sharing that example, because I've personally never seen it, but I do always like to reinforce and reinstate that importance, because it is a lot more work for them, and we really wanna help them to make it a one-stop shop. Going back to a little bit of the source and the checklist, how did you guys feel about the self-help tool? Were you guys able to see the breakdown of all of the documents that we need for each scenario?
Yes. Yeah.
And were you guys able to notice there are some scenarios in lease files where we need 2 Reg 262 filled out?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I think you guys had the question about that one. Do you guys wanna share or elaborate about what you guys found?
Yes.
So in that answer, we found that in noticing it upon the DMV checklist as well, we noticed that for any changes to the registration to the vehicle or for any lease buyouts, it would require 2 Reg 262 forms.
So changes to registration and for lease buyouts, exactly. And then you see there's examples if you click on the little links on how those look like. Okay. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about the self-help tool?
In that case, are we collecting 2 transfer fees?
So you collect 2 transfer fees when it is lease buyout, private
Changes to
party.
regular.
Yeah. So you only do, I think it's just the 1 fee though, because we're only transferring between. No, it's private party. So yeah, you would collect 2 transfer fees. Yeah. Sorry, I had to think that one through a little bit more. I was like, wait, yeah, there's 2, so you would need to collect it. And you guys know how to GL everything on. So if it's not gonna be like funded into the loan, everyone knows how to GL it for Scimitar if they're paying out of pocket.
Can you share what happens if we forget to collect the fees?
If we don't collect the fees, then normally we do want to have to call our member back, and then we do want to have to credit that into their account. So it can create a little bit more issues.
Yeah, more work on the back end.
more work.
But consumer loans, what they do is that they put it in the branch
Audit.
GL.
Oh.
Yeah, so, and then that's when we have to have a conversation with you to say, you need to call the member and collect the fees so that we can balance out. So we can credit back our GL, or it becomes a loss to the branch,
Yeah.
which we pass it on to you.
Kind of bouncing off of that, so just in case we also charge the $25 by accident, they did let us know just to go ahead and debit the GL, the fee GL. so you don't need to actually call. Like if you accidentally charged it, you can always just reimburse it.
You can fund it back. And then there was one question on your guys' side. I think it was the looking for how you can tell for license plate and specialty plates on registration. So what did you guys find for that one?
So how I'm able to distinguish whether it's a specialty or just regular license plate. On the top of the registration, normally it says like 11 or 31. So if it says 11 or 31 right off the bat, I know it's just a standard license plate. If it has like, you know, Avalos 1, then more than likely that's a legacy plate, right? So that's how I'm able to kind of, you know, distinguish that.
I know at the beginning when I was first doing DMV, it was something so easy to forget and overlook. So now I learned, okay, if I see type 11, type 31, it's probably regular plates. It's always good to double check and ask or remember, but those are just really quick off the top ways to know how to see if the plates are specialty or regular.
I have a question. If it's the black plates, but it's not specialized, they're still specialty. So how do you
Yes.
tell on that? Because if you ask the member and they're like, I don't have specialty plates, but yet it's the black license plate, which is not a standard.
You
Do
look at the
what does that come
registration.
in? Yeah, but what number is it? Do you know?
That I don't know.
Any number
Any
that's
number,
not
yeah.
11 and not 31
31
is
is
just
gonna show it.
considered to be
Yeah.
specialty.
I mean, if you have any questions on it, you can always call DMV as well.
Mhm.
Making a copy, send it out to them to have it reviewed. If they okay it, you can place notes. The DMV okay it we spoke to.
Or you can always ask them,
Yeah.
is your license plate gold and black?
Take a picture.
Yeah, you can, if they're like, yeah, then now you know too.
And then to add to that, I did have to do a classic vehicle, and it was the original plate, so it was 11, but it was black and gold. So I called DMV and they said we can't do it. So be careful when it comes to classic vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good curve call there.
I thought we don't do
For
DMV
you
classic
young
vehicles.
people, the black and gold was
I think we
the
can on
old,
certain ones.
the old school, like a
All the
long time
originals.
ago standard.
That was
So, yeah, it was our standard back when I was little. So now they're charging you extra for it. Unfair.
So Emily, I have one question on the lease buyout one. You know how you said leave the odometer?
Yes.
And what else are you leaving blank?
The purchase
The
price.
purchase.
But in the sample, it shows it filled out.
Yeah, I know, and that's one of the things that
Yeah,
was a little
they're-
bit confusing with
They're letting
DMV.
us know that they are gonna be changing it.
Mhm.
Obviously, this is a soft launch, so
Mhm.
there are some fixes that they're gonna have to go to implement. But they'll let me and Emily know, just like make sure you disclose it to your team that the odometer doesn't need to be filled out and the purchase price doesn't need to be filled out.
So in a recap email, can you maybe attach this new one and then maybe highlight the couple things that or the couple things they
Yeah.
changed? And then put, you know, in big bold letters, lease buyout, the sample shows this, but do not fill it out, just so we can refer that to now until they do change that, cause I think that's very misleading at first and
Yes.
it's gonna be confusing.
So yeah, we'll make sure we update everything on as best to our ability as we can, and then always, even though we do have these laminated and printed out, you can see they're revised and there's dates on them. So always refer back to the source if you really do have any more questions about that. But I know we don't have too much time left, so I did just want to go over a few things that DMV noticed were some like not necessarily mistakes, but some things that we do need to be a little bit better, some areas of opportunity. One of the things that they noticed is sometimes team members, instead of putting the PO box for the address on lease buyouts for the Santa Ana PO box, they're putting their branch's address. So just make sure the address when you see the lease buyout packet or to fill it out to where they need to send the title to, it's showing the PO box in Santa Ana. We do
We have a stamp.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
I
have a
used
stamp
it
up
the other
here
day.
for it.
Yeah, it was good. And then you want to also make sure, like for private party, you do fill out the odometer. They are having odometer readings missing for private party, and it does need to be accurate, and it does have to match what is on CLOS. So sometimes when we're processing CLOS and we're asking for valuation for the vehicle, we just get a general estimate of the odometer reading. When we're funding it, it does have to match, and that's some things.
Something else as well for when we're doing a lease buyout on an OR, for the power of attorney, we do need to collect both signatures, even though it's an OR.
Wait, say that again, please.
So when it's a lease buyout or on registration, we need to collect those signatures on the power of attorney, which is 5.
Yeah, that's some kind of general stuff that we do.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'll do today, I'll make sure I create an email and highlight a few other things, especially some Q&As that they did over the phone, and then we'll attach some key points in regards to the changes that are happening. I mean, at the end of the day as well, if you guys do have any questions, feel free to reach out to Emily or myself.
And anything else?
Can you share why the two of you?
We've actually been sitting in on DMV meetings, so we do get a little bit of an
Once
inside
a month?
scoop once a month
Yeah.
for DMV processes and just some general stuff regarding DMV. And we're not like perfect, so we might not know all the answers all the time, but we definitely want to assist you guys to the best of our ability, so we want to be able to help you guys with that. So thank you guys.
Let me go ahead and
Yeah.
just add, I know how navigating the DMV self tool can be lengthy. Once you guys you guys can save the link under your favorites for the source, so it's an easier transition. Cause I know I get confused going through like consumer loan servicing, underwriting, so I'm always clicking, but saving it makes it a lot easier.